The Siege of Paris is our second DLC that's due out this year after the Wrath of the Druids, and I'm going to take you through 10 cool things to know about it, including release dates, official Ubisoft confirmations, as well as some good fun speculative chat on what to expect. Just as an FYI though, we do actually chinwag about some leaks currently doing the circuit at the moment, so just bear that in mind going into this video. In any case, let's dive straight in with number 10. So when it actually comes to release, we don't have a set in stone date as of yet. However, Jose, the post-launch producer, did say that it would be coming out in early summer. Now, summer officially starts on the 21st of June and ends on the 22nd of September. And if we actually look back on what Jose said about the Wrath of the Druids saying it would come out in early spring, that actually ended up being 40 days after spring began. It then also got pushed back 2 weeks, so it ended up actually being around 50 to 60 days, which I also think would have a knock-on effect for Siege. So if we use that as a template, with summer starting on the 21st of June, and we go ahead and lob on 60 days to that, you're kind of looking at the end of August, start of September as an approximation release date. This also coincidentally lines up with a recent insider leak from Jonathan, who said it would be arriving in September, which is about 3.5 months away, which I think is a good amount of time to get everything squared away. Now that's all well and good for a September or so release, but what actually is the Siege of Paris? Well, Jose then went on to say in an interview that we'll be reliving one of the most ambitious battles in Viking history. Now he's actually referring to the Siege of Paris in 885, which is also not to be confused with the first Siege of Paris by the Vikings, which occurred in 845. Now the reason why this is so important, because at the time Paris was one of the biggest and most lucrative cities in West Francia and held a significant strategic importance. And I think the reason why Jose mentions how ambitious this battle was mainly because Vikings did not like drawn out sieges, and this one actually took over a year, so it was a huge tactical game changer for them. Now the reason why it took so long is because a man called Count Odo, who I'll go on to talk about a little bit more in a bit, was the dude responsible for the defences of Paris, and he actually refused to let the Vikings pass down through the river and kept the two bridges closed on the Ile de la Cite, which acted as kind of gateposts that allowed all boats access deep into the rest of Francia. Now at this point, this is when Charles the Fat, ruler of West Francia, rocked up. He subsequently ended up doing a deal with the Vikings, essentially paying them to bugger off into Burgundy, which was actually a region in revolt against Charles at the time. Now after this decision was made, Count Odo and the Parisians were so outraged by Charles's decision, they still actually refused to let the Vikings pass, and they continued to put up the barricade on the river. This is when the Vikings subsequently had to pick up their ships, drag them on land around Paris to then carry on into Burgundy with their raids. So a little bit of a brief overview, but that's what we're actually getting ourselves into in this expansion in terms of history and setting. And I've got to be honest with you, it sounds really great, like a lot of fun, and I do think we're going to be seeing a lot more historical characters to come. Also, big thanks to Winterhertz for taking the time to proactively share some of this awesome information with me on our Discord server. Cheers, mate. Now, speaking of important people, Jose also went on to say that in this expansion we'll be exploring war-torn Francia as you encounter lots of historical figures, which I think is really encouraging, as we haven't actually really come across too many historical figures comparatively to previous AC installments. Now, Jose's already mentioned Charles the Fat, who will definitely be featuring in this expansion. He's the big boss man, he's the king of West Francia, Germany and Italy at the time, and the actions and decisions of Charles will reoccurringly give Vikings the upper hand, mainly due to his inability to properly administrate in battle, which, as you can imagine, annoyed a lot of people. One of those being Count Odo, who we've just mentioned, and he actually ended up becoming king of West Francia not long after this. So he's a very important character at this particular siege, as he resisted the Vikings, which stopped Paris being sacked, which gained him wild renown and fame in doing so. Also, I think we'll be picking up Rollo, who we've actually already seen in game. He actually went on to become the first ruler of Normandy, Count of Rouen in northern France. He converted to Christianity and he managed to wrangle himself a permanent hold on French soil to the north, so surely we've got to see him again in this expansion. Also, another historical figure I think that we will come across is Siegfried, who was responsible for leading the Viking attack on Paris initially. And in fact, our good insider man Peder has actually found his name and Odo's referenced in the game files already, so pinch of salt here, he'll tell you that as well, but it does look very promising for these particular characters coming up. Now, touching upon another quote from Ubisoft, and they said that we'll be uncovering enemy secrets and forming strategic alliances to safeguard the clan's future. Now, this sounds a lot like what we've seen in the terms of quest to alliance format in England and Ireland, where we'll gain favour with a number of factions in each country to progress the storyline. Now, under Charles the Fat's rule at the time, the Carolingian Empire is unified under his rule, but that doesn't necessarily mean there aren't others who wish to depose him. He's actually on his way out, and people are starting to snap at his heels for that power drink. One of them being Arnulf of Carinthia in particular. He's actually nephew to Charles and has intentions to take his throne for himself. Additionally, there's many petty kings in specific regions similar to that of what we can actually see in England, all vying for power and ready to make their authority known in that particular particular time period. In any case, there's several different factions alive and kicking at the time of the DLC, including the Parisians, the Aquitaines, and the Robertans, so expect more regional squabbling, multiple different quests for competing petty kings outside Paris, and I don't think they're going to be deviating too far away from the story type arc system that we've actually had in Ireland and England thus far. Now, this actually brings us quite nicely onto number 6, which is the map, and where exactly this is actually all going to be taking place. Well, as you'd expect, it's going to be including Paris, but are we actually going to be able to explore anything in the surrounding areas? Well, Jonathan recently released a leak of a potential map that extends all the way up to the coast of Cork and to the east of Amiens, with the River Rhône running all the way through as you'd kind of expect. This makes a lot of sense to me, as the entire DLC will kind of act as a siege, where we'll be travelling from the coast all the way to Paris. We'll then have to make alliances with local kings and pretenders in the vicinity of Paris, as we're going to be there for approximately a year as we infiltrate a highly fortified city. Now, I'm also really excited to say that Ped has found some locations in the game files, so I'm actually going to be putting together another map like we did in the Wrath of the Druids, and to be honest with you, we were pretty much bang on with it last time, so this is going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to be exploring this in more detail in an upcoming 10 leaks to know about the siege video. So lots of awesome stuff to discuss, so hit the notification bell if you want to be the first to know when that drops, and I'll have a fresh French map for you, and I'll be quite keen to hear your thoughts on it. So coming in at number 5, and there's quite a few things to unpack here, and that's because I think we're going to be getting some new cavalry units, which will include some replayability surrounding that, as well as new river raids. Now, this is because Ubisoft has said there will be replayable content where you will battle the elite units of Charles the Fat. Well, the elite units of Charles the Fat were actually the Frankish military, and they were the most effective fighting force of their time because they were the first ones to utilise and organise cavalry. Also, big shout out to Pascal for letting me know about this. He makes some awesome AC content, so check out his channel down below. I've learnt incredible amounts of German watching your videos already, mate, so cheers. Now, many Vikings, as you'd kind of expect, absolutely hated them, but respected them for their brutal efficiency to combat, and they were by far the most dangerous opponent at the time. Now, I know our current horse combat system is a little bit shoddy at the moment, to say it politely, but I'd love to see some sort of animation improvement of it going forward. Having the opportunity to be able to swing a one-handed sword on horseback against some Frankier cavalry would be absolutely fantastic fun. But when it actually comes to replayability inside this DLC, I think the majority of it will be based around the surrounding rivers of the Seine and the Rhône, and I reckon we'll be picking up a lot of river raid additions here, as well as that 4th replayable free content mode that's not yet been discussed. By the time Siege hits, I think we'll have quite a lot more to do than we have right now, as we've still yet to pick up more river raids from Ireland as well. Now, when it comes to stealth, I think it's fair to say as well that it hasn't been at the forefront of our saga in Valhalla so far, but saying that, there has been some improvements since launch, and stealth additions in terms of abilities, such as the smoke arrow, which unfortunately at the time of this video still isn't working, but at least we've got it in game. Hopefully they smoothen that out as soon as possible, as well as some old school mechanics and opportunities such as the King's Pleas and bonus stealth missions. Now, Jose also said that in the Siege of Paris, we'll be able to infiltrate and try and conquer Paris from within. And this does give me a little bit of hope when it comes to old school social stealth in cities, just by that infiltration choice of words. I do think that we're going to be laying that prolonged siege to Paris, and after getting the lay of the land, begin to play both sides by entering the city and completing those tasks. I also think that we'll be even hunting those order members inside the city walls, and utilising a lot of old school stealth mechanics, which I think would be really, really good and much needed for the game. But in this time period, Paris was also one of the biggest cities in the Western world, and if we do actually take a look at the promo art, it's got that Lord of the Rings Gondor grandeur look about it. So I'm expecting more emphasis on a ground stealth experience in a city where the parkour opportunities should be more numerous than what we've seen so far. And this is just on what Ubi have said and the imagery shown, and I think that's a fair assumption, but whether we'll get that or not, we're just going to have to wait and see. By the way, if you picked up any value or learned anything new, then a like on this video would be very kind and very helpful, so thank you very much. Now, of course, we're going to be hunting down some Order of the Ancients members in Paris. I couldn't find anything mentioned specifically from Ubisoft so far, but we do have reference to the French Order in Valhalla itself, which I think is Ubisoft doing their foreshadowing work ahead of time for us here. So in Alfred's study, after completing the storyline of the main Valhalla game, you'll come across a letter from Alcuin, which is directed to Charlemagne, who's the grandfather of Charles the Fat. Alcuin had been invited by Charlemagne to be a scholar in his court and had conducted an internal investigation into the kingdom's churches and monasteries at the time, discovering the Order of the Ancients had permeated into the faith, corrupting the beliefs of many of the clergy. Now this letter is that very report about all of this from Alcuin to Charlemagne, noting this discovery. Now coincidentally, Alcuin died a week later through unknown circumstances, which is absolutely classic. But interestingly, and according to AC Wiki, Charlemagne was actually the leader of the Order of the Ancients, so I don't think it would be a surprise to me that Charles the Fat, grandson of Charlemagne, is a part of this order, but I don't think he's Grand Master of sorts, largely due to his incompetence as a leader. So I think we're going to be picking up a lot more Order targets in this one, as we didn't really touch too much upon the story in the Wrath of the Druids, and I think with this rumoured third DLC aside, this DLC was originally planned as the crescendo for Valhalla, so I'm expecting a little bit more depth here, and I think there's potential for us to definitely get it. Now at number 2, and it's weapons, and it's been a hot topic throughout the lifespan of Valhalla so far, and for good reason. One-handed swords, where are they, and are they coming in the Siege of Paris? Well, the answer is yes, as they've been noted by Jose in an interview with Jorraptor. It's a good video, and the link is below if you haven't listened to that yet, but I think this is something we're all looking forward to, and that includes a Sword of Eden, which has actually been found in the game files as well as another famous sword called the Dirindol, which was actually leaked on an achievement list by Jonathan a while back, and was the sword of the legendary paladin Roland, who was actually a famous first officer of Charlemagne. Now the sword was actually capable of cutting through giant boulders of stone with a single strike and was indestructible. Also, as a bit of a tease, Pedder's found these weapon skins in the game files, and obviously this is subject to change, folks, and should be taken with your healthy dose of salt, but it does seem Eivor can equip these, and it's unknown at this stage whether we'll be able to actually access them ourselves when Paris does come around, but I think they are actually the ones currently available to many of the NPCs in the game at the moment, including Bassam's one. Either way, they're in the game files, and it's super cool to see. Looks promising. Now at number 1, and we're only a few weeks away from E3, and Ubisoft have confirmed their presence there. In fact, and this was noted by Jor on the third DLC expansion video, lots of the AC community have been receiving star player invitations, which likely means there's going to be a large presence of that particular game at that event. Otherwise, what's the point in inviting core community members of a particular franchise if you're then not going to announce anything about it, you know? And I could honestly see that third DLC being announced for early 22, showcasing new content to come. But I also think we'd pick up something Paris related, as it's a great platform for them to do so and an easy way to get more eyeballs on their upcoming DLC. I even think this makes more sense as well, as they've actually just pushed Far Cry 6 back to October the 7th this year to help fill that fourth quarter financial gap. And I reckon marketing will be increased with the Siege of Paris DLC comparatively to that of the Wrath of the Druids to pick up some more cash and make more sales. Also, in terms of a new game plus, after the Paris DLC, it's also likely when we're going to be getting this, as Ubisoft said they're focusing on new content rather than making the game suitable for replayability and scaling. So it's a bit of a shame that that's not sooner, to be honest, but by the end of the year, I think we'll be golden. Now, if you're also looking for an awesome growing community who enjoys Assassin's Creed as well as everything not Assassin's Creed, then considering checking out our Discord server. There's a great set of people here, and it would be great to see you in the lobby. Also, big congrats to Incognito, who won our photo mode competition for last week. What an absolute banger, mate, and thanks to everybody in our community who contributed and helped each other during the launch of the Wrath of the Druids. You guys are the best. Anyway, I think that's enough from me. I'm sure I'll catch up with you all in the next video, and as usual, coffee's on me.